Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is CJ. It's time to give you guys an update on the reef tank. It's been a few weeks, and I say that because my last couple of vids really have just, focused on flow and pump placement with the Mp10 and different things I've learned along the way that I just wanted to share with you guys. So if you haven't watched that vid or you're new to my channel, or if you just want to find out about flow on my tank, I'll break it down fully in that vid. So go back, check it out, click on the link. It's a pretty good watch. So with that being said, this vid really is going to focus on the tank. So a few topics we're going to cover this vid are going to be my corals. I've had some growth, and then I've had some corals that are not responding as well as I thought, so I may need to move those around. We're also going to cover my livestock, as you can tell already. A lot of new additions swimming around, and a few headaches I've noticed from my new additions. I'm definitely going to cover that for you as well. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about the algae scrubber. If you guys haven't followed along with me, I did introduce a nano algae scrubber a few weeks ago. Nothing really has happened in that time until recently, so I'm going to share those results with you guys. And slow and steady progress, but progress nonetheless. So going to be a full update. Let me quit running my mouth and dragging this out longer than it needs to be. Let's go ahead and get to it. So a couple of weeks ago, I did put a small order in with Amazon. Nothing major, and I really don't do a lot of unboxings with this stuff, but I figured it was necessary this time because I have a few new items in this box that I haven't tried on my tank, and for document's sake, got to make sure I include it on some kind of vid for you all that's following along. So my first pickup, it's going to be some standard filter floss. It's a different brand than I used before, but the last bag I had lasted me for damn near a year. Great stuff. Now I'll say without it, I've really missed it. Using the stock sponges that come with the JBJ, as they collect the large detritus, they don't clog as fast. I've noticed a lot of buildup, and it's really affecting my water quality and my nitrate, so looking forward to get back on my routine. Now when it comes to my carbon, I did use the Marineland carbon in my tank, and it finally ran out, so I figured, this would be a good opportunity to try something new. Heard great things about matrix carbon, especially with it having, lower phosphates involved, so hoping to avoid any blooms when I change this out. Now, when it comes to food, I really look forward to trying this Cellcom, food enhancement. I heard great things about it from, some people are really respecting the hobby, so looking forward to trying it. And then, last but not least, the NLS pellets. Now, they actually have a marine formula. I've never tried this. I used to use the Thera A. So I'm looking forward to, seeing if this helps my fish out, to really go for it. So we're going to take a look at it, and I'll let you know what I found out since using this for the last couple of weeks. Now, in this hobby, there's always different ways we can save money. And when it comes to filter floss, this is no exception. Now, I'm directly comparing these bags because they're basically the same price and the same stuff. Filter floss is nothing more than just pillow stuffing. The difference is the bag on the left is made from a fish manufacturer, and the bag on the right, this just comes from my local hobby store. And it's basically pillow stuffing. So with that being said, the pillow stuffing on the right, I try to make sure it was safe as possible, meaning, it's 100% polyester, hypoallergenic, supposed to have nothing else in it, just pillow stuffing, right? Well, it still made me nervous. And I say that because when I added this to my tank, immediately my skimmer went nuts. So when your skimmer goes nuts, it's for a reason, and trust it. So after a little more investigating, I found that some companies during the manufacturing process include different things they don't list, meaning, flame retardant things or different things that your skimmer may detect that you won't see on the package. So with that being said, just encourage you guys to be cautious, be careful. And when it comes down to it, is my tank worth, double the size for the same price? I would say no. So in the future, I'm going to stick with what I know. I only buy stuff that's made for tanks from people with tanks. So just food for thought for anyone new. So let's get back to my tank. Now for anyone new, I do run this Tunze9004 Skimmer in my return section for a few different reasons I've explained on my old videos, but as you can tell, regardless of any fluctuations that may happen from my auto top off or even from variable flow on my display, the skimmer's still doing a great job, still foaming, and I do empty that collection cup maybe every 3 to 5 days depending on how heavy I feed my system. Now I also still run my mini reactor. It is full with phosguard. I make sure it doesn't tumble, that's very important. And then with that being said, I just recharged it or replaced it, 3 weeks ago. And I'm really gonna, go a long time without replacing it. My whole reason for it, I'm gonna give this algae scrubber a real chance to really, try to remove those phosphates from my tank. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the algae scrubber. Let me show you all what's been happening over the last few weeks. So for anyone new to my channel, or if this is your first time seeing my tank, I did a full unboxing and installation on this drop algae scrubber a few weeks ago. Just click the link down below. It'll give you all the details you need and hopefully answer any questions that you may have about it. But before we take a look, let me look under here and click off this auto top off. And I say click because I have this power strip with switches on it. And I'm not gonna lie to you, if you're in this hobby and you don't have a power strip with switches on it, you're losing. Go get you one. It makes your life a lot easier, trust me. I wouldn't have a tank without one. Now, as I mentioned before, I have been running this algae scrubber on my tank for roughly 3 weeks now, and I have followed the manufacturer's recommendations for lighting. Now, they say when you first add this to your tank, to run the algae scrubber 24/7, pretty much for a week or two until you notice a change. And that's pretty much what I did. So I would say after, about a week and a half, I looked in the box and I noticed that white film on the back was starting to change color, more to a brown color, kind of a diatom looking color. At that point, I knew I had some kind of action, so I went ahead and reduced my photo period. I went from 24 hours down to 20, and I set it up kind of a reverse cycle, meaning the time it's off is during the middle of the day, the peak hours of lighting for my actual display. And then once my display starts to ramp down, the moonlights come on, it's when the algae scrubber kicks on. So my thought is, if there are any benefits to reverse lighting, hey, why not try it with this algae scrubber? Let's see what happens. So I finally turned that red light off. Let me give you guys a look inside the box. Now, I do want to remind you guys, I haven't opened this box in almost a week and a half. After adjusting the photo period, I just kind of, figured it was going to take its time. So I put it back there and kind of forgot about it. So this is my first time looking at it. And honestly, pretty surprised with the change. It's really went from a brown color to looking like a lush green algae starting to kind of take over. With 3 weeks in, I'm pretty surprised with the growth. Consider this is also competing with the phosguard I have in my reactor. And, I had a really light stock in my tank for the last 3 weeks, so almost 2 months or so. And I really wasn't feeding heavy. So, those times are going to change. I've definitely added more fish. I'm definitely feeding more. So it should be more nutrients. And then with me not replacing the phosguard in my reactor for a while, at least I don't plan to, I'm going to really give this its fair shake and let it grow and, see if it can control things. If everything works out like I hope it does, I'm going to end up either removing that reactor or just running carbon in it. So, I'll let you guys, keep you updated on this situation. If nothing significant happens, I'm not really going to share. I figure maybe an update bi-weekly or, monthly update probably should be all we need, at least until it gets going. So that's the algae scrubber. Let's go ahead and get to the tank. So I'm gonna take a second to share some coral growth I'm noticing in my tank, starting with my mushroom garden. My plan for this area is to have these Rhodactis mushrooms kind of cover it, especially the orange and green. I really love those. And then my Superman mushrooms also kind of add a nice contrast to it. Keep in mind, I started with 2 of each. If you look on the left, you'll notice a 3rd mushroom popped up. I really don't know how these mushrooms propagate or, how they spread out, but it's really encouraging to see a 3rd one pop up because it's really, starting to spread out like I want. So if I can get the orange and the green ones to do the same, I'll really be happy about it. I think they're really liking this low light kind of shaded area. It's underneath my leather coral, and it really creates it looks like almost a tree with, things underneath it. So I really like the look of it, and it's really encouraging. So these corals are doing well. Hopefully they continue to do so. Now, there's a huge difference in the mushrooms that are below my finger leather, the ones that are being shaded, compared to the ones that are getting this direct light. This is a mid-level area in my tank, and I'm really, struggling with trying to find a coral that'll fit this area. I'm just not getting any luck. These mushrooms, I was hoping they would acclimate, but they're almost losing their color and starting to kind of show a palish, kind of bleaching color. So more than likely, I'm gonna have to move these guys and pretty much add them to my garden down below and find a new coral for this area. So, I'm still hunting down something that is gonna be eye-catching and, do what I want. But for now, it just shows you, some corals just need lower light, some don't. So we'll keep it moving, and I'll keep you guys updated on this situation. Sometimes you add a coral to your tank and you just kind of forget it's there. That's exactly what happened with these zoanthids. Now, I believe someone told me before these are Superman zoanthids. I don't really know the names of them. You guys can tell me if that's even close. But the reason I'm showing you this because these things are going crazy. I started these with maybe 4 heads that I glued to this rock with super glue. As you can tell, they have multiplied, they have quadrupled. exponentially, and they're still growing, and they're really going to take over it. I'm really satisfied with the growth. The only thing I wish I did different was not add them to this rock. I mentioned this because anyone new, when you're adding corals to your tank, you may think, hey, it's going to look good there. But if you're adding a crusted coral like zoanthus to the wrong place and they start to spread, you're done for. So the whole reason I have a problem with it is because the color, coordination of my tank. I'm really particular with that, and I'm kind of trapped in this situation. I have purple zoanthus followed by a purple torch coral, and it just doesn't do well. If I can do it over again, I would switch these with the zoanthus on the right that have more of an orange color to them, and I think that would give me the contrast I need. So just food for thought. Be careful when you glue a coral when you're first adding corals to your tank, especially if it encrusts, because once it starts growing, you're stuck, and you just got to live with it. So the next coral I'm going to share with you guys is going to be my Duncan coral. By far one of my favorite pieces in the tank. It's been a good grower for me. It went from 6 heads to over 20, and was really a full-looking colony. Up until about 3 weeks ago, I'm not sure what started the problems, but it completely closed up. And then once it finally started to respond and open up again, like its former self, I noticed it was under attack. You see those sweepers on the left side from the purple torch? They were reaching it until recently. I don't know how they extended that far, but I ended up moving the torch a few inches to the left to try to avoid it. So just when I fixed that problem, the coral below it started attacking it as well. And that really shocked me because that octo spine really has been peaceful. Haven't seen any sweepers from it at all. And then recently it starts sending out, 4 or 5 inch sweepers. And sometimes it gets lucky and nails my Duncan coral. So I don't know what I'm gonna do about this. I may just have to live with it if those few heads are the only ones that get torched. And if it really starts affecting my colony, probably have to move this Duncan coral a little up higher to try to avoid those sweepers. So I'll keep you guys updated. Don't want to lose this coral for sure. It's one of my favorite pieces. I've been really patient with this meteor shower coral. I stuck it here and I promised myself, don't touch it, don't move it, and let it start growing. And I was rewarded. As you can tell, it's really starting to encrust on the rock work. It's just the beginning. And I really look forward to this completely covering this side. Give me a great contrast of that teal and red. I really love those colors. I'm really looking forward to it. So definitely a good sign for my tank. So that's pretty much going to cover all the corals I want to highlight for you guys. Overall, the tank's doing well. Got a few choice mushrooms I have to move around to kind of give them a better position as far as lighting goes. And then a few corals I got to make sure they don't kill each other. So other than that, my euphyllias are open and happy. My leathers are doing fine. And my green star polyps are growing crazy now. They're actually starting to branch out. I never knew green star polyps can branch on their own. Pretty unusual. I'll try to get some footage for my next update for you guys. But other than that, the corals are doing fine. Now, as far as changes to the tank, so I decided to make 2 significant changes to my tank. The first being removing calc from my system. I've been using calc in my tank for the last, I would say, 6 or 7 months. And it's had benefits as far as keeping up, my calcium elevated, keeping my alkalinity up, at least I thought it was. And then, just all the other side benefits that calc gives your system. But with that being said, my last incident with my auto top off really kind of pushed me over the edge, and I really want to be careful with not overdosing my tank anymore. So the best way to know that is to really start charting how much my tank consumes. And the best way to do that is to make it go cold turkey. So no water changes, no calc, until my numbers really start to drop and I really can keep an eye on, how fast it's dropping. So over the last week or two, I've really been concentrating on testing my alkalinity and my nitrates. With the extra bio load, of course, make sure my nitrates don't get out of hand. And as long as they don't, make sure my alkalinity doesn't drop too much. Until my alkalinity drops, I'm not even going to worry about checking anything else because my calcium was way too high. It was over 500. My magnesium was really high. And until I see any kind of precipitation in my tank or my alkalinity drop, really, I'm going to save the test kits and just roll with it. So that's the plan for now. I will do water changes. I'm not saying I'm Xing them out, permanently. I know there's trace elements needed. I know there's other benefits to water changes. But for now, I'm just really trying to figure out how much my tank's consuming. At least that's the plan. So when it comes to my stock list, I have been making additions again. Now keep in mind, I do have ick in my system. I'm well aware of it. A couple of months ago it flared back up, and then the fish that were stressed didn't make it. Now, since then, I've told myself I was going to give time. I ran with a light bio load, a light stock list, and once they start showing, healthy behavior, everybody was fine. It was time to add more fish. Finally reached that point, so I think it was hard, but I waited as long as I could. I just couldn't wait anymore. So with that being said, let me go ahead and cover the additions. So I went to my LFS a couple of weeks ago. The plan was to add a fish with some personality, maybe a little color. Finally something to add to my tank since it's been so long. Now I decided to go with the Flame Hawkfish. I heard of these guys before, heard mixed reviews as far as them being safe for your tank, but I really like the personality and the color, so I decided to pick them up. But of course, you go to get one fish and sometimes you end up with two, and that's pretty much what happened to me. The tank beside it, there was a midnight angelfish. Fish was jet black. I've never seen a fish jet black like that before, and I just really was just so curious that I picked him up too. So I know what you guys are thinking, two angels in the tank. I'm trying it again. So keep in mind, this is risky, but I based this decision solely off my Flame Angel's previous behavior. With the two multi-bars I added in the past, it never showed any aggression, and that trend continued with this Midnight Angel. These guys get along great, so no issues, at least yet. So I'm pretty thrilled about it. I may end up working out, but if I need to remove it, I will. So far, so good. So after adding those two fish, I still felt like the tank needed something else that will add some more movement. So I decided to add 4 Chromis. They're blue, they're highly active, they eat all the food from the water column, and they school together. So I figured if I can keep those alive in my tank, I wanted to try it. Now keep in mind, I could never even think about doing this if I still had the damsel in my system. I tried it before, he chased every Chromis until they died, but I don't have that issue now. These guys are settling in, they've been in the tank for about 3 days, they're eating like pigs, and everybody's getting along. So the Flame Angel, he really is the tank boss, but for the most part, he doesn't care enough about him to stress him out. So really looking forward to this. I think I'm finally fully stocked. Maybe one more wrasse, but we'll see. So as it is today, my current stock list is 2 wrasses, 2 angelfish, 2 clownfish, 1 hawkfish, and 4 chromis. So definitely back to a full bio load at this point. Am I concerned as far as it, being too much for my tank? Honestly, no. I've had this many fish in here before, and my nitrates were never really an issue. So, I'm definitely keeping an eye on it. I'm not naive. I know there will be some kind of spike until, my biological filtration catches up. But with all the pond matrix I'm using in my system, all the flow and the maintenance routine I have for my tank, I really try to stay on top of it. I don't really see it as being a problem. So, if I can support it, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work out, I'll share the bad news with you guys. But so far, so good. So let's get to the bad news. If you take a look at my tank, the corals are there, the fish are swimming around, everything's looking lively, but I'm missing one thing. Well, actually 5 things if you keep count. I had 5 shrimp in my tank that are no longer there. I had 2 peppermint, 2 cleaners, and actually 1 fire shrimp. Now keep in mind that fire shrimp and those cleaners have been in my system for almost the life of my tank, along with my wrasses. Now this is predating my Flame Hawk, so keep in mind. One night I looked at my tank and I seen my Christmas Wrasse swimming around with what looked like an antenna sticking out of his mouth. I was thinking, what is he eating? What is that? I only come to find out that it was my cleaner shrimp. Looked the next day, it was missing. That was the first one. 3 nights later, the second one went missing. So it's pretty much murder by wrasse, and the only shrimp remaining was my fire shrimp. I don't know if his shell was too hard or he was just smart enough to hide out of the way, but my Christmas Wrasse went on a murdering spree and destroyed every shrimp in my tank. So my thought was, hey, if I got a shrimp eater in my tank, I might as well add the Flame Hawk. Let's see what happens. Maybe, everything else will be okay. Maybe I can add another cleaner shrimp. Shortly after adding the Flame Hawk, 3 days later, I seen what looked like a molt of my fire shrimp. Sometimes it molts and it's hiding, you can't see it. Come to find out, he had gotten eaten too. So I don't know if the wrasse did it or if the Flame Hawk did it, but at this point, every shrimp has been destroyed in my tank, and I call it murder by Flame Hawk or murder by wrasse, Christmas Wrasse to be particular. He's the only one hunting around, he's my prime suspect. So I don't know what I'm gonna do about this situation. I got a shrimpless tank, I'm not too happy about it. I may add another cleaner, but if you add 2 or 3 cleaners, if they all get killed, all those combined cost more than any of the fish that's eating them. So highly frustrating. I don't know what I'm gonna do about this situation. So if any of you guys are thinking about getting wrasses in your tank, or thinking about adding a flame hawk, don't just worry about your corals, worry about your shrimp. If it's important to you, you may have a decision to make. So me personally, I may try another shrimp. I'll let you guys know what happens. I'll actually record it. If the guy lives and makes it, I can just forget this. But if he doesn't, it's a lesson to the wise. Don't mix shrimps with wrasse or flame hawks in your system. So other than that, that's going to cover the bad news for the day. So with all that being said, that should update you guys on everything that's happened over the last few weeks. All the coral growth, the fish additions, and all my shrimp losses in that case. So consider you guys updated. Now, as far as future plans, as I said before, really looking to optimize my tank, seeing what's needed, seeing what's not. Gonna test my parameters, gonna see how much my tank is using, if I even need calc or how much I need it, and how often I really need to do water changes. I'm trying to get away from doing things just because and doing things because my tanks need it. It's not really experimenting if you're helping your routine and you're helping your tank really settle into its own rhythm, and that's really what I'm trying to do. So other than that, I think I'm gonna cut this vid here. Dragged on a lot longer than I expected. It's probably the longest update I've ever made. But considering, these updates are gonna come a little less frequent. Life's getting a little busier now, and it's really almost, summer's breaking and less time for videos. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this. And as always, hey, you guys like, comment, subscribe. You guys do what y'all do. Y'all be easy.